Today is another day of the Late Night Thoughts, and this is a podcast-like series where I want to share my opinions on certain subjects. And today's topic is really what you see on the table here. This is the topic on megapixels and resolution. I'm Richard, a portrait photographer, and welcome to ZP Productions. And today will be a late night thoughts on the topic of megapixels and resolution. So I'm a photographer, as I said, I do portraiture, and I started off from 300D. I started off in the digital age, and I used many cameras along the way until the GFX100, the A7S III, and the R5. As you can see here, these are the three cameras in the modern day. They are produced less than 2 years ago, and these represent one of the lowest one at 12 megapixel. This represents the mid-high range, 45 megapixels, and this represents the bleeding edge, 100 megapixels. All these are, I would say, as consumer cameras. Of course, there are industry cameras that are lower and higher megapixels, and there are, of course, the Phase 1 150 megapixel medium format cameras out there. But these are the cameras that you probably can get in the shop, touch it and play with it and purchase it quite easily as long as you have the funding to purchase them. That said, I'm lucky enough to have all three, and I experienced all three in the modern age. But for me, coming from the 300D 12 years ago and using so many cameras in between, I have to honestly say that megapixel was never my most important parameter on the sensor itself. And you may be wondering, why am I buying a GFX100 then? I bought the GFX100 because one of my friends, 3-4 years ago, was a Phase 1 sales agent. He let me test the Phase 1 IQ3-100, and I have to say it blew me away in terms of dynamic range. Not the megapixels, the dynamic range. I still remember very vividly because it was a shoot at the beach. The sun, the clouds, bright as hell, but in the end the photos turned out really nice. The colors were smooth. I could recover all the colors in the scene very nicely, very minimal noise. I could pull down the sky, see wherever I want, and process the photo in a way that I could not before. And that got me hooked on to medium format and the whole thing about high dynamic range cameras like the GFX100. So this is the reason why I bought the GFX series, for the high dynamic range. And till today, the GFX100 still holds one of the highest dynamic range you can purchase as a modern camera, only losing to the Phase 1 IQ3 100 and 150 camera and IQ4 100 and 150 cameras. Those cameras have a sensor way larger, and they have a lot of megapixels too. So that is the case. To me, dynamic range was always more important. So, when I see all these cameras on my table and I utilize all of them, I really felt that megapixel is a number. To me, it really is just a number that is very nice for the purpose of sales and marketing, but not too important for the purpose of actual photography, at least for portraiture itself. Now, I know that there are photographers that require high megapixel cameras such as landscape. If you shoot landscape, you want to admire the landscape, you will print A1. In fact, I think so far, I do own a large format printer like the Pro 2000. So far, the most common large printing I've seen are usually artworks. If not, they are landscapes. Portraiture rarely goes so big. Most people don't want to see their face in a A1 scale. But really, I think landscape people will enjoy high megapixel camera because they can literally relieve the landscape by looking at the corner and spotting that small little house, which I actually do it myself. So I can imagine high megapixel cameras are very useful for certain form of photography, but for me, and I think for most general consumer, megapixels don't matter too much. Now, you may be saying that I'm generalizing too much, on this megapixel affair, but some people may say that printing will be the way to see the megapixels, or maybe you have high resolution screen to see the megapixels, or maybe you zoom in a lot and you need to crop a lot and therefore you need the megapixels. These are all the various scenarios. Honestly, as a photographer, I do not crop that much. I try to shoot close to frame, and mainly my cropping is rotational, or if not leveling, or if not making sure the verticals are correct. That is the amount of crop I need. I do occasionally crop a lot, but they are far away, and in between those crop shots are normally shots that I properly frame. Now, the thing is, when you talk about high resolution, right, you don't really get to admire it as a consumer normally. Why do I say so? Even when you talk about prints, there is a concept of print resolution. There's also the same concept in your screen resolution. A 4K screen is 8 megapixels. And for printing, there are high resolution printers, low resolution printers, similar as your monitors themselves. So whatever media it is, be it printing or be it your monitor screen, it is determined by the resolution of those devices. So most of us have 4K monitors. So I feel that it is right that a camera should have at least 8 megapixels, because 8 megapixels will fill a 4K screen nicely, and therefore allowing you to admire the photo nicely on 4K screen. Now, most of us don't own an 8K monitor, honestly. 8K. It is in the market today. There is some by Samsung, but it is rare, and I do not know how many people actually purchase them, because 8K monitor requires 8K media, which is something like, I don't know, 32 megapixels of resolution. So if you have an 8K monitor, yes, something like an R5 will show maximum detail, or something like the A7S III will show less detail, because an 8K monitor has 8K resolution. But most consumers have only 4K monitors. So to most consumers, I don't even think they care about resolution as much, because the monitor is the limit. And that's also assuming that they are going to see your photos 10 cm away and looking at a pixel level, which I don't think most people actually do it. Now, when it comes to printing, it's the same thing. If you print with a graphics printer, a fine art printer, a glacier printing, whatever they call it for the high-end printer, I own one, the Pro 2000 by Canon, Image Graph series, is in the studio. What happened is that, yes, you can see the resolution in that printer, but most of us don't own such a printer. So can you actually see a difference? Now, maybe buying a $10,000 camera will at least allow you to understand and make you research on the printers themselves. And as such, you know such a thing exists. But if you're not, you print on a general poster printer, you ain't going to see a difference in resolution between the GFX 100 and the R5, even up to A2. Even at A1, I don't know whether you can see a difference or not, because the printer just doesn't have that kind of resolution. Yes, so in the end of the day, it's about the resolution of the device you see on. Now then, we talk about cropping. I did say that personally I don't crop too much, but I think cropping is a very editor function. Only people who edit will crop, or will zoom in, will look closer. That's because they are trying to find the flaws. They are trying to remove things when they zoom in beyond 100%. These are people that are mainly the photographer, the editors, and people who want to beautify their own face, right? So it is not a very normal behavior by people who just want to look at a photo itself. Now, as such, who actually uses the zoom and crop function a lot more are people who edit, and are people who are in the advertising industry, or in the marketing industry, or in the industry to produce posters, billboards, because those people will want the resolution to have flexibility in post-process to get what they want. In fact, I saw an advertising shoot many years back. The guy was shooting in medium format, and this is exactly what they did. They shot at 3/4 body. The moment the art director likes the shot itself, he say, "Can you crop in? Can you show me head shot, shoulder shot, full body?" Okay, it's good. Then he'll move on to the next photos, and he do the same thing. Because in their industry, they will want to crop to utilize it at however they want in post. So capturing as many megapixels as possible is important to them. But consumers don't really need that much. And then we move on to the digital age. As I said, I shot photography for 10 over years. And in the very digital age today, how do we actually see photos? Mainly through Facebook Instagram. And more often than not, I will honestly say resolution has been destroyed by compression. Easily destroyed by compression. So in the end of the day, the only thing you can see left is the colors and the dynamic range of the shot itself. Not really the dynamic range, in fact it's the colors only. Dynamic range is also an editing function, but it is a necessary editing function. You don't care about resolution, but you need to care about dynamic range because a crush shadow is ugly, and a highlight, unless it's for artistic reason, that is blown off to smithereens and white may not be very enjoyable to see. So dynamic range is actually important, and pulling them down, compressing them up to the purpose of general viewing is actually a very important function in photography, unlike megapixels. So, I just want to talk about this megapixel and resolution because I feel that today megapixel and resolution has been used extensively as a number to market, to sell the consumer. But actually, really, honestly, ask yourself, is megapixel that important? Or is the other sensor quality more important, be it dynamic range, sensor readout speed? Those actually affect your photography more than megapixels is. At least until we move on to the era of 10K screen and 15K screens. So when we move on to 8K screen, then I'll say as the R5 is a necessary number because this is just nice 8K, if you crop out the top and bottom, this is actually 8K. So yes, till the time that comes where all of us have 8K screens and Facebook don't compress our photos to smithereens and YouTube don't compress our videos to smithereens, then I'll say as high resolution camera is important and megapixel is no longer just a number. But as long as we live in this world today, a 4K resolution world, then I think the A7S III still produce great photos. And even when you transit to the 8K screen era, unless you are going to see your 60-inch monitor at 5 cm and see the pixels themselves, you probably can't tell a difference, honestly. That's about it for today. I just want to share my thoughts on megapixel and resolution. And to me, that dynamic range is probably more important than that. But what do you guys think? Leave your comments below. Why do you think you need a high resolution camera? Why do you think you need 100 megapixels or 50 megapixels? Or why do you think you can live with 12 megapixels? Share with me, what you do, and maybe, I can learn a little bit more. Because as a portrait photographer, I honestly cannot appreciate very high megapixels. Yes, it's nice to occasionally zoom in the eye, see the details, but if not, most of the time, I'm just enjoying the dynamic range here. That's about it for today. I hope you enjoy this, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.